how do you handle incidents in your team? What DevOps best practices you have implemented for the same? They are clearly focusing on your experience here and expecting you to explain what happens if there is an incident in your team. That is, if there is a P1 alert, priority 1 alert, if something broke, a critical service has broken, how do you get notified? What is the process around solving this problem is what they're expecting. Obviously, if you have not worked on such a scenario or not seen it, it might be a bit difficult to answer, but I'll do my best to explain about it in a few seconds. Well, you can pause this video here and see how you would answer it, but let me go ahead and explain to you how incident management would be done in any DevOps team to begin. First and foremost, what is important for you to know is there needs to be a proper monitoring setup. Okay. And monitoring setup can be done using CloudWatch, like we are aware of. It can also be done using Prometheus, which is the most famous way to do it today. And we will be able to also achieve this with other tools that are available, Nagios, etc. And then we have alerting. And please remember, monitoring and alerting are two different things. If you monitor, it doesn't mean you have to trigger alert. With respect to alerting, in CloudWatch, we can use SNS, which will trigger emails or some services. We can use Alert Manager for Prometheus. And for other tools, of course, there are other features available. From this alerting methodology, what is common from here is how we notify people. We can notify people via email. We can notify people via Slack. We can notify people via phone call. Now, how is it actually implemented in the organization? I would like to explain it here. Let us say that we have an application. And this application is a front-end application that is serving some traffic. Now, this application will be running on some kind of autoscaling group or Kubernetes cluster or EC2 instance, doesn't matter where. What will happen is this particular application will give out some metrics. And how it gives out the metrics can also be a part of the code that is getting written or implemented. Once this metrics is given out, the respective monitoring tool will collect this metrics. And in Prometheus, for example, it can scrape the metrics from this endpoint. CloudWatch, you can push this metrics to CloudWatch, etc. After you have collected the metrics, you can set up observability. That is, you are aware that in CloudWatch, we have CloudWatch dashboard. And in Prometheus, we can use Grafana, by using which you can set up a dashboard where you can see some metrics information. After this comes the alerting part. So what happens when you have some issue is you will write some alerting rules. And this alerting rules will monitor the metrics that is getting collected from this application, that is from the Prometheus. If this alerting rule is not satisfied, that is, if it finds that certain metrics are missing, it is going to use a respective alerting system to send out the Slack messages or email or phone call. Now, the most preferred way is to send out a phone call because you cannot have an engineer sitting and staring at his email inbox all the time. Hence, you might have integrations, external integrations done that will send or do some phone calls. So how do you explain this whole setup if it is asked generally? Let me summarize everything that I have just explained to you. You can say that first we have an application. And with this application, it exposes metrics. It exposes metrics. And the metrics that is exposed, what we will do is we will collect it using our monitoring system. Then we have alert rules. And this alert rule will trigger on call or alert to the on-call engineer. So another piece of information I would like to add here is what happens after the incident. After the incident, that is, once the incident is fixed, we also do what we call as postmortem. And postmortem, or you can name anything else, after effect, etc. The postmortem or after effect is to understand what went wrong and how to mitigate this in future, how to avoid this, let's just say, avoid this in future. This way, what happens is you just don't fix an alert and sleep. You go back and see why this alert happened in the first place and what should we do for this alert not to repeat again. All of this is very key in terms of how you set up this system, and it falls under DevOps best practices, needless to say. Okay, how do we present this in the interview? In our company, we have applications that emit the metrics that are required for monitoring. These metrics are collected by our monitoring system. In our case, it is XYZ. You can say either CloudWatch, Prometheus, doesn't matter. And after that, we have certain alert rules, which will check this metrics value. If there are some metrics value that are missing, if there are some metrics value that are not proper, in that case, what we do is we send out an alert notification via our alerting system, and it will call our on-call engineer. The on-call engineer will come online, try to resolve it, or escalate further if he feels the same. I would also like to add that after the incident has happened, we do something called as aftermath effect. That is, we look back into the incident and see what happened, or we can also call it as postmortem, where we sit and analyze what happened during the incident and what are some of the actions we are taking to mitigate this for future. This best practice has to be implemented in every given organization so that we have a streamlined alerting and monitoring setup. I would like to add one thing here, that is, we need to make sure that we have a same kind of monitoring system or alerting system as possible throughout the organization, which again is the practice of DevOps. This is how you can tackle this particular question in the interview. Now make sure that you are aware of one kind of monitoring and alerting system. It can be CloudWatch, it can be Prometheus, Nagios, doesn't matter which one you have learned, but be aware that you should be knowing at least one of them for sure. Very well. That is it for this particular question. Let us go to the next question now, my friends, and see what kind of question is coming up. What do you think is a future trajectory towards your journey of being a DevOps engineer? The reason why I have put this question in between all this technical question is probably this could be the first opening question or maybe the last question asked in the interview. And many of the people whom I have interacted with and with whom I have asked this question in the interview try to not give an answer at all, and it's a bit problematic if you think of it, because this is mostly a behavioral question and nothing to do with technical question. When I ask them this, why they don't answer this, it's because they were never expecting this question. And they are like, what do I do as a DevOps engineer? I know all the tools. What next, right? Well, I would like to tackle this open-ended question as part of this video. If you were not expecting this question in this part of the course or this particular video, you could just skip this question. But I believe still that this can be helpful for a lot of people. So how would you answer this question? Let us see the motivation in which they are asking this question. Like I shared with you earlier, This question could be asked to you in the ending of your interview, right? So maybe you're approaching the end of your interview and they might ask you this question when there is 10 minutes left. So what are they trying to get from you? Okay, as a DevOps engineer, maybe you know all the tools, right? So what next? What will you do? Why should they hire you as a DevOps engineer? Every company wants an engineer or a DevOps engineer who can grow with the organization, right? If you are already aware of everything and if you don't look forward to growing yourself, then maybe you're not a right fit to them. That is the gist of this question. So you have to be very careful. From my experience of taking so many interviews, I will let you know one thing is that no one knows 100% of all the tools. So you have to use this to your advantage. First, you know that you have spent 50 minutes in this interview and maybe you answered, let's say 60% of the questions asked, and you have not answered the 40% of the questions, right? You have not answered them. Use this as your improvement section, okay? So if they're asking you, what's your trajectory? Start by explaining the concepts that you think that you are not very strong in. Let me give you an example for this. Let us say you are not really good in Kubernetes, or you're not really good in Docker, or doesn't matter. Let's say you're not very good in Python. Use this as your motivation for your next job. That is, you can say that I believe my journey of a DevOps engineer is not completed, something like this. And you can put forward all the technologies that you have learned incompletely or have less confidence in. This is a very good shield for you also to tell, because they can put that in their notes of the interview and they will suggest to the HR that, okay, this person is not probably the 100% fit, but we see that he has the ability to learn and he sees himself on what technologies he has to learn in future, and it's super good for us. So how would you answer this particular question in the interview then? This is how I would answer it. And this answer might be very general, so please be careful, but let me share how I would answer this. I would start by saying that I see myself learning new technologies to begin with, but let me say that I am not fully comfortable with XYZ technologies. Of course, you can fill this XYZ. And I look forward to make sure that I solidify these technologies in my next career job. And I also look forward to make sure that I master the previous ones. And the best thing that I would like to do is keep on learning. I would use the company's learning budget to get certain courses which are really good in terms of these technologies that I explained, which I don't know very well. Also, I would probably work closely with my seniors, understand all of these technological stack, and make sure that I implement them in our staging and development setup. This is my trajectory for the next 1 or 2 years, but I will also add that DevOps is an ocean. There are tools every day that are getting released. There are open source tools, there are some enterprise tools, and every company uses them differently. So it will never be a ending journey for me. It's a never ending journey. So this is what I plan for. This is how you can, tackle this particular question. Well, sorry if you're not expecting this question in the interview of a technical interview for all that we are doing from the beginning, but I thought it's a good addition and I tried my best to explain this. The next question is coming from the domain general. And the question is, tell me about yourself and what are your day-to-day tasks being a DevOps engineer? This is a golden question, my friends, because every interview you are going to attend, they're going to ask you this question to begin with, right? And many people who have taken a training or who are in a different domain and want to start working as a DevOps engineer will struggle to answer this particular question and have seen it a lot of time. In this particular video, as a last question of this training, I will try to give you a complete insight on how a day-to-day work looks like for a DevOps engineer. You can fine-tune this. This might not be the exact way every DevOps engineer works, but I will give you a brief picture about it, okay? So here we go. I will explain how a DevOps engineer would work on a day-to-day basis. And this is a generalized approach. This is not same for everyone. So a DevOps engineer will always work in collaboration with multiple engineers, okay? A DevOps engineer will always work with multiple other engineers. These people can be developers, they can be testing team, there can be SRE or support team, let's say, or sales team, doesn't matter. They can work with all different teams because they are the source of automation for the company, right? So I'm going to explain how a day-to-day work looks like for a DevOps engineer, starting from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. This is your morning routine. You're going to first check your Slack handles to see the previous day messages, etc. Then update your Jira. Okay. Jira is a way in which you are going to work in tasks. So these are your work tasks. These work tasks will be something like, let's say, a restart, EC2 instance, just an example, something like this. So you're going to update this. And at 10 a.m., you are going to have from 10 to 10:30 a.m., you're going to have a daily stand-up. So stand-up meetings is going to happen every day. And here you are going to update the team, what you have done in the previous day, what you will do in the present day. And that is why you have to update your Jira ticket, okay? After the stand-up, you're going to start working from 11:30 a.m. Let's say till 1 p.m. You're going to start working on your Jira ticket. Like I shared with you earlier, this Jira ticket can be anything. It can be working on AWS. It can be, GitHub reviews of your team members, code reviews, let us say, code reviews of your team members. It can also be operation task, etc. It can also be releases, for example, okay, making new releases. And then from 1 to 2, let us say you are taking a break for lunch. You're going to come back at 2 p.m. and you're going to work till 4 p.m. This is just an example. And here you're going to do pair programming with development team. What is pair programming? You're going to work hand in hand with developers. You're going to see what they're trying to develop. You're going to help them deploy it. You can also help them test it because they might not have elevated access to certain environments. And being a DevOps engineer, you might have it. So you're going to support them, help them, etc. Without this, you can also replace this particular time with other meetings, design discussions, etc. Even that is a possibility. You don't have to say you're pair programming. You can also say you're doing design discussions, etc. And from 4 p.m. till 5 p.m., you can say you are working with someone, or you can say you are using this time for learning new stuff. And it's very important that you show this also in the interview because they want to see a person who is learning constantly, who is making changes constantly, who is always improving. And that is very important for the team because by doing so, you will also share the knowledge with other people in your team. So here, I think I have explained to you a day-to-day work of a DevOps engineer as briefly as possible. Again, I would like to add a note here that this might not be the exact working methodology of any DevOps engineer. This can change, the timing can change. But if you are someone who has not worked as a DevOps engineer at all, I believe this is going to give you an insight of how a day-to-day work will look like for a DevOps engineer. This is an opening question in almost all the interviews. So this information that I've provided to you is super helpful, I believe. You have to formulate it and present it properly. How will you present it in the interview? This is how you can do it. Being a DevOps engineer, my day starts at 9 a.m. and from 9 to 10, I spend time checking my previous day's Slack messages and later update my Jira tickets. I will always update my Jira tickets based on the work progress that I have done so that it is up to date and others can also review the ticket. The next step, that is from 10 to 10:30, we have a daily stand-up meeting where I am going to share with my team what I have done in my previous day and what I will be working on today. Later from 10:30 to 1 p.m., I will continue to work on my Jira ticket, make progress on that ticket. Usually my ticket involves working with AWS, doing code reviews, making some operational changes, or doing certain releases, etc. Later from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., I'm going to work with developers doing pair programming, or certain days I do design discussions, etc. From 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., that is the last 1 hour of my day, I spend learning new technologies that have come into the market, if they can add some value to our team also. This is very important for me to keep myself updated with what is happening in the DevOps market and learn new technologies, and also share this with my team members later on. This is how you can present this particular answer in the interview. I hope it was helpful. Thanks a lot for watching the video, and bye-bye. Let us see what kind of questions will come in this video, and also understand the concepts around this DevOps question and see how to answer them in the interview. And the question is, what is the difference between a web server and an application server? In fact, this question was actually asked by one of the students who took this course, and hence I'm presenting this question. So what is exactly an application server and what is exactly a web server? Before I explain this, how you should answer in the interview, it is important for us to understand these terminologies. The first one is application server, right? And web server. So let me first explain what is a web server and what is an application server. Let us take an user, and this user wants to access a website, www.xyz.com, just an example. What will happen? A home page of a particular website will appear. What is this home page showing? It is displaying some information related to some content that the user can view, buy, etc. Once he understands or sees this content, let us say he wants to buy. What he has to do? He has to now take an action to log in. When he logs in, he basically gives his login detail, which can be email ID and password. Now the question is, how will this get verified? Because only the right email ID and password has to be accepted, right? Now this is done directly via database for sure, or you can also speak about an application server. You can pass on this information to an application server, which will then speak to the database and send this information back. Now, why is an application server required here in this case? Can I remove this application server? Yes, definitely. But as you scale, this is just one example, but as you scale, you might have a buy, you might have a cart, right? And you might have other options like, I don't know, fraud detection, etc. So all of this, if they end up speaking with the database, it will become a big problem for the database itself. Rather, what we should have is we should have application server, which will do some logics for us. And it is going to speak with either the same database or it will speak with different databases. This is also the foundation for what we call as microservice architecture. Now, based on this whole explanation I just gave you, I'm pretty much sure you have understood the difference, but let me repeat myself. A web server basically helps display the content of a particular website. It renders the content to the end user. It helps display the content to the end user. Whereas an application server, as the name suggests, it's a backend server that does some kind of computation and helps to pass on this information to our web server. I hope now it is pretty clear for you. So how do we present this particular answer in the interview? This is how you can do it. Web server is basically used for displaying and rendering content to our front-end users. But as the user starts using the web server more, let us say he wants to log in or buy or something else, there is some kind of computation that has to be made, and this can be made with the help of application server. The major idea of having the application server is it will act as a backend server for us, which does some kind of computation with the help of the data in the database, and it passes on this information to our web server. By using both the application server and the web server, we will be able to scale much faster. And needless to say, it is the starting point of having microservice architecture design. This is how you can present this particular answer in the interview. Well, that is it for this video, my friends. I hope you understood some concepts in DevOps. Also, very importantly, how to answer them in the interview. Thank you and speak to you in the next video. The question is, do you use sonarqube? If yes, please share why is it important. If no, then share why it might not be required. Here, they are again introducing a question in a format in which they want to see if you have really worked on a particular tool. sonarqube plays a very important role today in many organizations, and in certain organizations, they might still not use it, which is also fair enough. If you have understood sonarqube, if you have practically implemented sonarqube at least once, then feel free to tell yes and answer as much as possible. Because as a DevOps engineer, you might not interact with sonarqube a lot apart from the installation. If no, then go ahead and say no and just give a brief answer. But I will try to explain a bit about sonarqube for you guys. And this particular slide is pretty big. You can pause and read it as we speak, but let me share as much as information possible. sonarqube is an automatic code review tool. So once you push a code, if you want to automatically review this code, then you can use sonarqube. What does it check? There are some packages that you can use. sonarlint is there, and sonarlint will check for issues with linting, etc. Code quality is there. And the code quality lets you know if your project is ready to production, meaning in terms of production quality of the code. Then clean code as you go is a plugin or a feature that is there. So clean as you go code is an approach of code quality. It tries to make sure that developers are following and maintaining a very high standards of code, writing functionalities, or how they write the classes, how they package it, the naming convention, etc. Then it can also give you issues. That is, sonarqube automatically will raise issues if there is anything, and also point out the code where it is open for vulnerability attack. Then security hotspots, which is very important. This particular point, the last point, is super important. So sonarqube highlights security sensitive pieces of code that need to be reviewed. This particular piece, that is the last one itself, is one of the best use case of sonarqube, because this is very hard for us to track and keep a note on, because there can be so many kinds of security hotspots we don't know. And a tool that can do this is really great, and that is what sonarqube is. If you want to read about more about sonarqube, I would suggest you to check this document out, or just go to sonarqube and you will be able to understand it. I will go a bit further and try to explain the architecture in which sonarqube might work, and take this opportunity to learn a bit more about sonarqube if you have not used it. So we have a developer, let us say, and the developer makes a pull request. Pull request is changes, right? And he makes these changes to GitHub. Now, usually what happens, this changes gets reviewed by the peer review, that is by your senior engineer or your colleague. But before that review happens, what will happen now is sonarqube comes into picture. And sonarqube is going to get your code and it is going to do the code check. Okay. Certain code checks that I just discussed. Does it follow the standards? Is there any security related vulnerabilities? It is going to check all of this and going to send back a report saying, okay, everything looks good or bad. And after that, the peer review will happen, meaning your colleague is going to also review this code. And he's going to first check if sonarqube has passed. That is, all the test of sonarqube has to be passed for this person to review. And he will review the code. And let us say he makes some comments, meaning he asks you for any modification, etc. Hence, as a developer, you make those modifications again. What will happen? Again, sonarqube is going to run and it will check again and the process will repeat. The final stage is when you get a +1. What is a +1? It is an approval. Once you get a +1 or an approval, the next thing that will happen is sonarqube can again run to check if everything is good, and then the code is merged. After the code merge happens, you can call Jenkins, and Jenkins is going to build the whole code for you. So how many steps did we go through? Let me try to recap it. So first step, PR is submitted. And second step, sonarqube pulls your PR, runs your test. Then it gives some information. Third step, code review by your peer engineers. Fourth step, there are some comments, you made the change. And fifth step is again, the sonarqube reviews your code. Sixth step, somebody approves your code, meaning your code looks good. And the sixth step is merging. So there are totally 6 to 7 steps that are present if you are using sonarqube in general. Okay, so how do we answer this particular question in the interview then? If you have used sonarqube, say yes and continue. And if you have not used sonarqube, then say no and continue. I will share a common answer. Sonarqube is basically used to check code quality, and it is of great help for us because it helps our peer review to be done much faster. That is, when we submit a PR, our peer reviews, that is, our colleagues cannot review everything like security vulnerabilities, etc. So to make this happen automatically, what we can do is implement sonarqube, which is going to do lint test, code quality tests, security vulnerabilities, etc. And after that, we can ask for a peer review. By implementing sonarqube in an organization, it will always help us to maintain a particular standard for our developers, helping them to make sure that they don't commit, let us say, some secrets into the repo, or maybe by mistake, download some packages or have some packages that already have existing security vulnerabilities, etc. sonarqube is super helpful, that can flag as many things out that can be fixed by our developers. And it is an important tool that can be implemented in all the companies. This is how you can answer this particular question in the interview. Now, for the question that says yes and no, you can say, yes, I have used sonarqube, and this is the explanation which I just shared with you. Or you can say, no, I have not used sonarqube, but I am aware of what sonarqube, because I learned sonarqube out of my own interest. And then you can continue with the explanation that I have just shared with you. Very well. That is it for this video, my friends. Hope you have understood what I have explained.